Hi, my name's Phil and I like talking about politics. So in this video, I'd like to discuss Boris Johnson's latest reckless lies about the state of Brexit and the UK's ability to cope with this self-inflicted madness and what his political calculations are. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, then please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So there are several strands to what Boris Johnson has been saying at the G7 summit this weekend regarding Brexit. He's insisting that the UK will easily be able to cope with a no-deal Brexit, but that a no-deal Brexit is the EU's fault. But if we can easily cope, why wouldn't we want a no-deal Brexit? Why is he trying to palm off blame if it's actually good for us? Secondly, he is again threatening to not pay the EU what we owe in the event of leaving without a deal, preying on the ignorance of many British citizens to what the actual settlement money really is. So let's tackle that so-called £39 billion again, even though the sum will surely be different with the weakening pound now anyway. I won't waste everyone's time by setting out yet again what this sum is. I've talked enough about that in the past. Needless to say that anyone who has read details knows that this money is not the UK's, it's simply being held in British banks at the moment. It is not a fee for retaining future services after leaving the EU. It also includes money for paying the odious Nigel Farage's MEP pension. But Boris Johnson, although accepting that some will have to be paid, says that we won't have to pay the largest part of it. When asked, however, he was unable to say what proportion wouldn't have to be paid. As always, he's never able to answer any follow-up questions about his statements. But the point is less about what the money is for, and whose it is, of course. It's really about the consequences of not paying it. From the point of view of the EU, the consequences are obvious. Brexiteers think that if the UK leaves the EU without a deal this October the 31st, that the EU will be keen to begin negotiating on November the 1st. This is not the case. The EU will not even talk to the UK on any matter until the British government commits to dealing with the border with Ireland at the very least. That's obvious on every level. Even if you're still dumb enough to believe that other EU member states would sacrifice Ireland for a deal, Ireland itself is a member state with a veto on any deal. So the UK will get nothing at all until it implements the withdrawal agreement in full. But the second consequence of not paying what we owe is that countries outside of the EU will not trust us anymore. And what happens if, say, a bank becomes untrustworthy? Investors pull their money out. You have a run on the bank, and then that bank disappears up its own arsehole. The same will be true of the UK if we follow through with this madness. But then there's the issue of easily coping as well. Boris Johnson and his ministers keep insisting that Operation Yellowhammer, which was the planning for a no-deal Brexit that was leaked last week, was an old document and that it set out the worst-case scenario. We knew these were both lies from sources in Whitehall, but the Sunday Times has now published the leaked document in full. Not only is it dated August 2019, so it's bang up to date, but it's also made clear that it laid out the expected consequences of a no-deal Brexit this October, not the worst case at all. So the British government is deliberately lying to its people about the consequences of the no-deal Brexit that they are pursuing. It's also lying to us about whose fault it will be. But the more I think about it, the more I think that Johnson is making political calculations on the assumption that Parliament will block him. So let's go back to 2016, and Boris Johnson was arguing for the UK to remain within the EU. Leaving would have been madness, according to him. Then he wrote two articles for the Daily Telegraph. One was to set out why we should stay, and one was on why we should leave. Not to publish both and provide balance in any way, but because he was deciding which side to choose for political reasons. He then switched to becoming a lead Brexiteer. David Cameron was going to be stepping down before the end of the Parliament anyway, so another leader would need to be chosen, and Johnson wanted the job himself. He calculated that if he backed Leave, then he could attract the Eurosceptic vote within the Conservative Party. Part of his political calculation was that Remain would win, so he could simply emulate Nigel Farage, keep saying that we should leave, but benefit from the fact that we would not. But it all went pear-shaped when Leave won. So now the situation that he is now finally Prime Minister, having made promises of the hardest of Brexit, something that no Brexiteer campaigned before the referendum, I think he is making another political calculation to retain his power. He knows that Parliament intended to defeat him in a confidence motion. He put them off doing so straight away by promising a deal. Now he is saying that a deal may not happen, and any MP who thinks there's any chance of a deal at all is as thick as mince. It's no deal or extension this October. There is no other way. In the event of a failed confidence motion, Johnson faces either being deposed as Prime Minister, in which case there's nothing he can do, or a general election. He cannot prevent this if he's deposed. He has no recourse. Fortunately, Jeremy Corbyn appears to be helping Johnson out by insisting that he should move his beard into number 10. He might be persuaded to back someone with cross-party support, in which case Johnson is sunk, but that's not the current position, and there's nothing Johnson can do about that anyway. As for the general election, the Brexit Party was, and still is, a real threat to him. It will nibble away at Tory votes and cost him seats in all but the safest constituencies. So his strategy there was to out-Brexit the Brexit Party, promise the hardest of all Brexits, and that his plans could cope with any negative consequences. The problem with this strategy is that the consequences of a no-deal Brexit will be clear from day one, beforehand even, as the value of the pound will drop as soon as it becomes inevitable. And the Brexit Party are pushing the narrative that the Conservatives can't cope with a post-Brexit Britain. So Johnson needs to keep promising that he will take us out without a deal, but also that he's got it all under control. But under no circumstances must it actually happen. So I think Johnson's calculation may be based on Parliament physically stopping him from preventing another extension. But the missing piece of the puzzle for me is how he thinks Parliament will do that. There is a court case currently deciding if Johnson has the legal authority to shut Parliament down. The problem is that the court case won't be completed before Johnson intends to do it. The hearing for the Court of Session in Scotland is for 3 days before Johnson wants to prorogue Parliament, but that wouldn't be the end of it either way. There'll be appeals, and ultimately this needs a final say from the Supreme Court. So I'm left with 3 possibilities here. One is that Boris Johnson believes that there is a legislative way to block him so that no deal is averted. Of course, he wants that to happen potentially, but without getting the blame. The second possibility is that Johnson actually intends to go ahead with no deal, but with a general election on, say, October the 31st, but then I don't know why he didn't call one this summer. That was when he had his best chance. Although he's looking okay in the polls, he was looking better. Perhaps he was just indecisive. Or 3, that Johnson recognises the danger of being replaced as Prime Minister and is simply reacting on instinct because he knows there's nothing he can do to stop that if the various parties in Parliament get their act together. I suppose much of it depends on what those opposing no deal decide to do this week in Jeremy Corbyn's meeting. If they agree to back a candidate to replace Johnson as Prime Minister in the short term, then Johnson is just sunk. In that case, I'd expect him to become even more extreme in his death throes, as he'll never actually have the chance to follow up on any of the madness he's promising. But that's the situation as I see it at the moment. I hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.